Psychologists have been talking about self-esteem for 150 years almost, but nobody really could explain what it does. Self-esteem is a positive or negative feeling we have about ourselves. And clearly, some people have higher self-esteem. They feel better about themselves than people with lower self-esteem. And at one point, people were suggesting that we have a need for high self-esteem, that we seek high self-esteem because it makes us feel good. That always bothered me a little because just feeling good doesn't serve any real goals. Yeah, we all want to feel good rather than bad about ourselves, but what does it really do for us other than just make us feel good, even if we don't deserve to feel good in some cases because our self-esteem is higher than it should be? Well, as a result of a whole lot of research that we did, it began to look like self-esteem is really part of a gauge, a meter that's built into the brain that really is tied into giving us feedback about how valued and accepted we are by other people. So the sociometer is a gauge, a meter. It's like a gas gauge, like on your car. But instead of telling you how much gas you have in your tank, it's telling you how much social value do you have to other people. And if you think about the things that raise our self-esteem, what do I feel good about? Well, I feel good when I'm complimented by other people, when I succeed at things, when I achieve, when I think I'm a nice person, when people want to hang out with me. I feel good. My self-esteem goes up. Well, what's that indicating? It's indicating that I have a certain amount of value to other people. I matter to other people. So we explored this more and more deeply. And the idea of self-esteem being a meter, a gauge that gives us feedback about other people's reactions to us without us even thinking about it much. Because sometimes, somebody just sort of frowns at us and our self-esteem goes down. Well, what's going on? That's saying, hey, pay attention here. There may be something about you that you need to think about to improve your value to other people. And I don't think we have a need for self-esteem. We're not seeking self-esteem for its own sake. Just like when we fill our car up at the gas station, we're not just trying to make the fuel gauge go from empty to full. That's the meter. We're trying to get more gas in the tank. So when we do things that increase our self-esteem, it's not just to make ourselves feel better. It's to increase our social value. But those are sort of the same thing. So as I increase my social value, my self-esteem goes up. But fundamentally, I'm not trying to increase my self-esteem. That's just the indicator that I have more gas in my tank, gas in my social tank now. So it's a different way of looking at what self-esteem is about that sort of brings a lot of pieces of the puzzle together in ways that I don't think had come together before. So sociometer is important in us navigating social life by automatically giving us feedback about how we're doing with other people.
And I feel like a big issue people have is when you get that negative feedback and your meter's down here, I feel like in the moment it can feel like it can never go up again.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a good first step to understand if you want higher self-esteem is understanding that like that meter can go up, like
Yes.
depending on the value you bring to the world.
Yes, and very quickly. I mean, we often talk about people walking around with low versus high self-esteem, which, people do differ in their average level of self-esteem across time. But our self-esteem goes up and down on a momentary basis, and that's actually where its value is. I can feel real good doing something right now, and I feel good, and everybody likes it. And 3 minutes from now, I could make a terrible blunder, and everybody's yelling at me and telling me I'm an idiot. My self-esteem crashes. And a good meter will do that. It's going to keep track of what's going on so that I perk up and say, oh, geez, I need to fix this problem that I created. Now, the meter is not always accurate because our perceptions are not always accurate. To go back to your earlier questions, sometimes I feel more accepted than I should, and sometimes I feel more rejected than I should, which means that my self-esteem can go up and down illegitimately. It's not really tied to social feedback. But it's an alarm that sort of says, hey, pay attention here. Hey, you're doing something good. Let's sort of keep on doing this thing. Or, ooh, take a look at why your self-esteem went down. What happened here? Oh, it was because you offended this other person and they said they didn't want to talk to you anymore and you feel bad about yourself. Well, you probably should feel a little bit bad about yourself. Go and apologize to them and then your self-esteem goes up again.
Is it also safe to say, I feel like the more evidence you have, more positive evidence you have from the past of like where you match up in the world, because those moments of rejection or like failure are going to happen to everyone throughout your
Sure.
life.
Yep.
So I feel like is having more evidence of having is being more competent and having more evidence of your ability in the world help in those moments where you have that rejection, not let the meter go down a bunch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why people with high self-esteem, generally high self-esteem, they weather the ups and downs of good and bad things that happen to them and other people's reactions and successes and failures better than people with lower self-esteem. Because people with lower self-esteem in general often have had a history, a life history of getting a lot of negative feedback. So they don't, they get, when they get negative feedback when they're older, they say, well, yeah, here, there's more evidence that I'm not a valuable person. Whereas a high self-esteem person says, well, yeah, this person didn't like what I did, but no, boy, a lot of people have in the past. So that's why, childhood is so important. If a person's been grown up in a family that was highly critical and not supportive and not very loving, those people end up with relatively low self-esteem, and their sociometer is going to fire more often when they get negative feedback as an older person, as a teenager, or as an adult. And I think people need to keep that in mind. I mean, people who are really sensitive to rejection need to realize, hey, it's not necessarily my fault. I just got a lot of rejection and devaluation along the way, and so my meter is more sensitive to that than somebody who was loved and adored for their childhood.
Yeah, and the people who have that history of rejection and failure, and they're used to their low self esteem being here, it makes it that when you get those compliments or you do something good every once in a while, it can almost give you imposter syndrome, and it can
Yeah,
almost make you feel like this must not be true because I have so much evidence from the past to support that I'm worthless, right?
that's right. It would be really nice if we could sort of erase our memory of all of that stuff. If you could erase the memory of how your sociometer worked in the past and just judge it on the basis of the feedback at the moment, I think we would all be a little bit better off because we carry that history with us, and it's going to influence how we react to how people respond to us.
Yeah, they a lot of people have the issue of taking rejection and failure and they turn it into their identity of who they are as a person.
Yes.
When reality tends to be a lot more simpler, you probably just like did the wrong thing. And instead of like young people have this problem a lot is when they have a rejection or failure, they kind of like internalize it and they make it their identity that like this must be a problem with me. But instead, it was probably you probably just were doing the wrong things. And when you're young, like you don't really realize that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because we all do things that distance other people from us our entire lives. None of us are always going to have people liking and adoring and wanting to hang out with us. But if you think that each time somebody is not interested in talking to you or rejects you, it's something deep down about you and your personality, that's probably not right. You're absolutely right. We all just do things as we go along, miscalculations, misperceptions. We're in a bad mood on that particular day, and we just didn't do what we should. And yeah, but internalizing and saying, well, yeah, I'm a complete failure, nobody likes me, is almost always wrong. I mean, it is. I mean, it would be better to judge it on the basis of the current evidence, not the history that I've gone through the past 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Now, but with that being said, is there any like genetic or like biology factors that contribute to self-esteem? Or is it all, it's like the nature versus nurture thing, right?
Yes. Certainly, since the brain is inherited in a sense, I mean, it's got genetic, your brain is the result of the genes that you inherited from your parents. Some people's brains are more reactive than others. That's why introverts and extroverts differ to some extent, as extroverts want more stimulation and introverts want less stimulation, and that's sort of built into their brain. So I don't think there's any question that in the case of self-esteem or in the case of reactions to rejection and acceptance, some basic functions of the brain in terms of how quickly it reacts and whether it reacts negatively or positively, some of that's inborn. It's hardwired. It's not that you can't push it around a little bit. But fundamentally, as your self-esteem changes throughout the day, when you get positive versus negative feedback, that's a function of the situations you're in and the feedback you're getting and how you're thinking about the feedback you're getting, or even how you're imagining other people are thinking about you, even if they're not doing anything, can play a role. And I'm not sure that those beliefs have a very strong genetic basis. Those are things you've sort of learned to do to interpret the world and interpret your own behavior and people's reactions to you that you've picked up along the way. And you can change those.
How do we raise self-esteem when we don't get any feedback from the outside world? Because there's times where like you just don't get any feedback at all for stuff that you do. Are there ways to try to increase your self-esteem without getting that feedback?
Well, I think our feedback can go up and down even with no feedback. I mean, I think our self-esteem can go up and down with no feedback. Because so I can go do a good deed and put some money in a donation box. Nobody sees me. There's no feedback. But I can walk away feeling, hey, yeah, I did something good. I'm a good person in this moment. So we often feel good or bad about ourselves, not because we got feedback, but because we're imagining what value would people place on us if they knew about it. It's our beliefs about the positivity or negativity of what we just did. So what that means is how we think about what we did, irrespective of what other people say, is going to influence our self-esteem. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
I also feel like if we're if like you go throughout your day and you're doing the right things on a consistent basis, like you know deep down that you're doing the right things, and that I feel like that can help with your with not only with self-esteem but with confidence. Like you have
Absolutely.
confidence in yourself that I'm doing the correct things. You know deep down in your heart, but everyone can relate to this when you have those off weeks where you're not doing the things you're supposed to do, where
Yes.
you know you're missing the mark. It's almost
Yep.
like an internal feeling, like you know that you're missing the mark, you're not doing the right thing.
That's exactly right. And I think the sociometer in sort of affecting how we feel about ourselves as a function of whether we're valuable to other people or not, I think it's designed to give us that feedback when we're by ourselves. Because sometimes we do things when we're by ourselves that if other people found out that I stole this stuff, for example, they're going to reject me. So your sociometer has to warn you when you're doing things in private that if other people found out, it would lower your relationship value to them. And when we do positive things in private, we feel good about ourselves to continue to motivate us to do that. So you don't have to get feedback. It's this talking to yourself in your head, your own self-talk that plays a big role. And in fact, in everything we've been talking about here, it's not just what's happening in the environment around you, other people's reactions or feedback that you're getting. It's really based on how are you thinking about it.